Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is the author of the book, The Jewels of Faith, no other than Mr. Tyler Snewer.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Taylor. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Absolutely. So my name is Tyler. I'm a author. My first book is here on the screen, The Jewels of Fate. I published it when I was 17 years old, back in high school, and then a few years later, I launched the second book in the series called The Sword of Sorinth. I have that copy with me right here, and then I just finished my third book, so it's a trilogy. So series is done now. I've written the third book, and now I'm just going through the editing process until it's released.
Mr. Tyler Snewer, thank you so much for sharing your talents to the world. And what are the jewels of fate? And how are they believed to influence destiny?
Yeah, so the Jewels of Fate series, it's fiction fantasy geared towards teens and young adults. My age range is 12 to 18. Um, there's if you're someone who likes categorizing books based on tropes, it has things like found family, ancient secrets, love triangle, heir to the throne, all of that sort of thing that you'd find in many different kinds of fantasy books and series. Um, the kind of general plot of the first book, it's about this boy named Chuck, and he finds out his whole life's a lie. When teenagers start disappearing all over New York, he learns that magic is real, and there's a world called Echinacea that's full of it. And then he gets summoned by the queen of this mysterious kingdom to carry out a secret request.
Are the jewels of fate connected to any specific mythology, culture, or tradition?
No, no. It's entirely all from my head.
That's awesome and interesting. Do the jewels or jewels of fate possess physical forms or are they symbolic representation of power?
They're both actually. So the jewels are a real item in the story. Um, and part of the book is the heroes trying to locate these jewels because they have immense power. But they do symbolize kind of that struggle between good and evil, because both sides, the good guys and the bad guys are going over after these really powerful artifacts, and whoever gets them first essentially wins the battle.
What is the origin story of jewels of faith?
What is the origin story?
Yes.
um I would say it's hard to pinpoint one specific thing. It's influenced by a lot of books I read growing up. Like I mentioned before, it's not like related to different mythologies or different cultures, although some readers might find parallels to their culture, but that's entirely unintentional, and it's just kind of purely fiction. As for how the book starts, it essentially starts in New York in the real world, and then transitions over into this fictional world called Echinacea.
Are the jewels of faith scattered across the world or are they hidden in one location?
So there's three of them, and they're all hidden in separate locations.
That'd be awesome. So, how many jewels of faith are there and what does each represent?
So there are three of them, and it's hard to tell what each one represents. I mean, in the scenes where the characters kind of find them or they're looking for them, each one kind of connects with a different character in a different way. So I suppose it's less about what each one represents and more about what each of the, like, which jewel connects with who and why. A lot of times there's something from a character's past that then becomes important and they must kind of deal with that, or remember a moment from their past in order to find and obtain these jewels.
Very well said. Very well said, Mr. Tyler.
Thank you.
So, who are the guardians or keepers of the jewels of faith, if any?
Ooh, hmm, I don't know how much I can say about this because that would be kind of a spoiler
Spoilers?
for the book. But I will say they are well protected.
They are well protected, people, and you need to read it. So, what happens if the jewels of faith fall into the wrong hands?
Well, like I said before, it's really who wins the battle. So they have immense power. They're very, very powerful. Um, the creator kind of these jewels was a character who you don't see him in the book, but he's referenced quite a bit, and he lived like a number of years before the story takes place. Um, and essentially, like he put some of his own magic and his own power into the jewels. Um, so that's why like whoever wields them essentially, becomes super powerful.
Do the jewels of fate choose the wielder, or can anyone claim them?
Anyone can claim them. So some stories are like that, Harry Potter being the most popular, where kind of the wand chooses the master, as the saying is. That's not so much the case here. It's more of like whoever gets there first or whoever has them, wields the power.
Are there any known prophecies tied to the discovery or use of the jewels of faith?
There is. So there is a prophecy involving the main character. His name is Chuck. Um, and without going into too much detail about what the prophecy says, because it does involve some spoilers of the book as well. Basically, Chuck realizes that he is tied to these jewels, and he must be the one to go on the quest to find them, along with a few other characters. But he has to be on that quest.
How does one locate the jewels of faith, and are there challenges involved?
Yes. So in order to get to the jewels, there is a map hidden in the book, and the map is kind of cryptic because it's not like a typical map that you would find where it's kind of X marks the spot. It's more of clues and riddles, and the characters have to navigate these clues and riddles in order to figure out where these jewels are. But obviously, before they can do that, they have to find the map, which is hidden in a book. Um, so it's kind of like this chain reaction where they can't get to the jewels until they find the book, which will lead them to the jewels. So that's their first objective.
What sacrifices or consequences come with using the power of the jewels of faith?
Um, Nothing directly like tying the jewels to any specific downfalls or catastrophes or anything like that. However, it's a matter of how they are used, right? So in the wrong hands they can cause great destruction. um, and kind of that's what the monsters and the enemies in the book. um, so there's two primary antagonists. One is called an Ogla Tarantia, which is this big beast-like, wolf-like creature, and the other is called a Zeal, a which is a wizard who uses like dark magic. So both of these groups are going after the Jewels of Fate, but to kind of use them to cripple the kingdom, rather, whereas the heroes are going after it to build it back up, kind of thing.
Are there opposing forces or rival artifacts that can counteract the jewels of fate?
Not in the first book, um, but in the second book there is something that is equal in power to the Jewels of Fate. Um, and it's the same kind of thing. Like the heroes then are searching for this object, and they need it, for different circumstances, like from the first book. But it's the same kind of power struggle. But in the second book, there is a sword. That's why the second book is called The Sword of Sorenth. And essentially, this sword can cut through any magic spell, no matter how powerful.
What role do the Jewel of Fate or Jewels of Fate play in shaping human history?
Um, so for human history, that's interesting because there's a crossover between kind of our world, Earth, kind of as we know it, and Akinasia, the fictional world. So, like I mentioned before, the story starts in New York and then moves over to Akinasia. So essentially, if someone gets their hands on these on the jewels, they can actually use them to open a portal, or rip open a barrier between worlds and enter kind of our world. So that's how Chuck came from New York to Akinasia. He went through a portal, and it's the same kind of thing. So these jewels can create a portal at any point, and you can cross over here to Earth. So the second book kind of deals more of that, kind of going back and forth between worlds, and what does it mean for kind of Akinasia to spill over into to Earth as we know it. But essentially, yes. So basically, like the villains and the antagonists can cross over to our world and wreck our world.
Are there legends of individuals who can successfully wield the Jewels of Fate?
Yes. So before the main characters kind of enter the scene, the only known person who can wield the jewels are, the creator. So his name is Leonis, and you hear about him a lot in the first book. He's not like actually shown; he's just referenced. But he was the one who created the jewels, and he, put his own power in them. And then through a series of circumstances, they ended up being lost and scattered across Akinasia. So he's the only one who can, well, supposedly the only one who can wield the jewels.
So, Mr. Tyler, can you read one of your favorite chapter of the Jewels of Fate?
Ooh, favorite chapter. Um,
Yes.
yeah, I would say, honestly, my favorite chapter is the first chapter because it sets up the story, and it starts in New York, so it's very relatable to readers, especially those who live in the states. Um, but it really focuses on something's not right, something is going to happen, and Chuck's world, like Chuck is the main character, his world is about to be changed. So I can kind of read the first few lines here. So the story starts. I nearly witnessed the end of the world. All New Yorkers had been going about their regular routines with no idea what had really happened, but I knew the truth and how it all began.
Wow. Mr. Tyler Snore, thank you so much for sharing your book to the world or books to the world. Can the jewels of fate be destroyed or are they eternal?
That's hard for me to answer because it involves more spoilers. I can say they are very, very powerful, but even powerful objects have their limits.
Well, I will accept that answer, Mr. Tyler. Okay, so what will be your advice for those aspiring writers out there that want to write their own novel?
I would say read as much as you can and practice writing every day because that's how you get better. And by reading other authors, especially those in your genre, you learn about style, you learn about world building, you learn about character development, and then you take those lessons that you learned and you put them into practice in your own story. And if you do that over and over again, and you put in the hours and you put in the work, eventually, you will grow as a writer for sure, even if publishing is not your goal. which I hope it is. It's amazing to publish a book. I highly recommend it. But even if it's not, that's the best way to grow as a writer.
Yes. So, Mr. Tyler, can you tell us your research process for the Jewels of Faith?
Yeah, for sure. So like I mentioned before, it's not historical based or based in any mythology. So a lot of it came from my own head. But because of that, involved a lot of brainstorming and a lot of tweaking and development. So the Jewels of Fate actually started as a short story I wrote one day in school, and then I kept writing and I kept writing and I kept writing, and eventually it grew into a full-fledged novel, and that's when I knew I wanted to publish it. So my process for planning a novel and researching and developing it, it takes time, especially in that early stage. Like even my second book, after I had done the whole process, one time before that, it still took me about 6 months to outline the Sword of Sorenth, just because I wanted to make sure that the plot was developed enough, that the characterization made sense, that everything that needed to be in the book was there. So it takes a while, and then sometimes the writing can actually be quicker. So I find um, in most, like, I can write a one draft in about a year. So if it takes 6 months to outline and plot and plan and all of that, then writing the actual novel is about double that.
So, what is your writing process? Are you a gardener or an architect?
I am definitely an architect. I, yeah, I like to plan. I like to know where I'm going. I like to know what the next chapter is going to be about. I find that when, because there's sometimes in some cases the chapter isn't fully developed and I'm kind of winging it. I find my writing isn't at its best as it is when I know what I'm doing and I know, where the book is going.
Definitely. So, what is your short-term and long-term goals in writing?
So I want to keep publishing. So I just wrapped up the first draft of my third novel, which will close out this series. And some of my readers ask me kind of what's next, like what's the next thing I'm going to write. And at this point in time, I have no clue yet. I haven't started thinking about book four, but it will be a different story. I'm thinking it'll be in the same genre, keeping with the young adult and teen fantasy. But yeah, my long term goal is to keep publishing books. I'm also a screenwriter, so same thing, keep pumping out screenplays. Um, and eventually, yeah, just along with that, inspire other writers, and help other writers, you know, write their first novel.
Definitely. So, Mr. Tyler, what do you think your flaws in writing?
What are my flaws in writing?
Yes.
Ooh, definitely, definitely editing while I write. I've gotten better at it in recent years because one of the writing coaches that I follow always says to not edit while you write, to get that first draft done and then go back to the editing. But I find, especially around the middle mark of a story, I start second guessing myself and thinking, well, what if I changed this chapter, and what if I changed, this chapter? So it's really hard to stay the course and finish a first draft before going back and tweaking and editing things. So I would say that's my biggest flaw as a writer for sure.
So, do the jewels of faith have a connection to celestial or cosmic energies?
Mm, I would say no.
No.
No, um it's more like the magic that you would see in a Harry Potter book or a Percy Jackson book. Um because essentially the jewels, they channel that magic, and the characters use that in various spells and things.
So, Mr. Tyler, to sum up our discussion or episode, what lessons can humanity learn from the existence of the jewels of faith?
I would say there's a number of lessons. Uh, the Jewels of Fate talks about, well, not No, it doesn't overtly talk about it, but one of my big themes in it is teamwork and then family and kind of working together, because essentially these characters, they come from different backgrounds and then they come together through a series of circumstances, and then they have to embark on this quest to find these jewels. So it really is a book about um, working together and teamwork and overcoming differences. So in terms of themes, readers can definitely find a lot of that in my series. um, but I also hope that kids can learn that you can publish a novel no matter what the age is. I was 17, and I managed to do it. So let that be proof that you can do it. So I hope that's another lesson that readers take away from my novels too.
Yes, definitely. So, Mr. Tyler Snore, thank you so much again for sharing your novels to the world. We're looking forward for more novels to come, and I hope they will be a bestseller or award-winning piece. So,
I hope that
Mr.
too.
Yes, cross my finger. So that you will be my feature author of the month. All my feature of the month, either a best-selling or award-winning authors. So, Mr. Tyler, can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Absolutely. So you can follow me on all the big social medias: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at Snur Stories. My website is snurstories.com. So my name, SNURE, and then stories.com. Um, yeah, that's where you can find me. Also on Amazon as well, as you can see in this picture.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Taylor Snur because, as I said, more novels to come. So, Mr. Tyler, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
More to come, people. See you soon. I'm inviting you next year, Mr. Tyler, to be my guest